Oh, like when it's actually live. Okay, I think it's actually live. All right,
Right. Yeah, it
cool.
takes a second.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody who's tuning in or who is about to tune in, I'm gonna play our sick video intro first, and then we'll get the episode going. But first, we gotta hit this sick video intro. If I can hit the right one. Let's see. I think this is. All right, all right. Brently, thank you so much for joining me on Growing Up Fundie. How are you doing today? What's going on? What's new?
Excellent. I'm doing great. Yeah.
Y-
Hanging in there, you know?
I keep meaning to ask you, what kind of light do you use for your background? Because it always looks so ethereal and magic.
Right? Yeah, it's nice, right? Yeah, it's like this laser thing that we got. It's like one of those, if you see, if you're on Facebook ever, they always show the person like throwing it, and then it's like the whole room turns into like a starlight thing.
Yeah,
It's one of those. But
that's
I just turn
cool.
off the stars, and then it's just this ethereal, yeah, thing.
That looks awesome. Well, Brentley, thanks for joining me. For anybody who's joining us right now, Brentley, I actually met you through the mega streams. I remember that you were added to my little group chat for my monthly mega streams. We'd never really met before. And then I got more familiar with your content when you sent me your link. And I just thought your content was really funny, very engaging. You do a lot of reaction content as well as interviews with people. So, how did you get involved in that to begin with?
I for the longest time, like, I was doing a podcast. I do a podcast called Unapologetics, and,
I like that.
I was doing that a lot, and then I was just kinda, like, trying out on the side, like, this YouTube reaction stuff,
Yeah.
and, I just thought I figured I could just, like, make a dummy account and then just start liking and subscribing to, like, the craziest stuff I could find, and then just see how dumb everything gets, and it seemed to just go off a cliff after, like, I don't know, about a month or 2, and it's like all be scared of demons stuff, you know?
That's
So
wild. Yeah, I bet it's like endless content. You think you'd run out of content after a while, but you specifically do like fundy type stuff, right? Like religious based reaction content.
yeah, yeah, it's mostly, it's like I said, like, as deep into the fundamentalist extremist as you can get, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to see how extreme that it gets, you know what I mean? So, if there was something, like, really crazy, I would always like and subscribe to those, and then it just keeps sending you down, like, these, like, ever crazier rabbit holes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been very entertaining.
I think I'm just going to go onto your YouTube channel and look at everything you're subscribed to and just start subscribing to it just to see what happens and like what YouTube starts recommending for me. And so, how did you become involved in this content? Because usually I feel like when we we being like people in the atheist agnostic community here on YouTube, when we get involved, it's usually because we were raised religious or we have some kind of I don't want to say beef with religion, but usually we had like some kind of experience growing up religious. What's your story? Where did you come from, I guess?
Yeah, I was super, indoctrinated, very heavily indoctrinated. Yeah, it's funny, it's like with a lot of I used to say it all the time, like, "Oh, why do the atheists care so much?" Like, "Oh, it's like, so you guys sit around and talk about not believing a thing." But most of us have been, like had this stuff beaten into our heads for, like, our entire childhood, and so we're kinda programmed to think about it quite a bit, you
Yeah,
know? So when you finally realize none of it's true, you're still kind of thinking about it quite a bit because,
right?
your whole family, it was my whole life up until a certain time. And then, it kind of fell off from there. But yeah, I was homeschooled. I was heavily indoctrinated. All of my science books were like why science is stupid. It was
Wow.
I mean, the book I had, I actually showed it to Aaron Raw for a minute there. It was actually by Gish, which, from the Gish Gallop. Um,
Wow.
so it's funny.
And
I didn't
so
even realize that.
if you had to categorize yourself under a religion or denomination, what were you at the time?
It was the Calvary Chapel
Got
movement.
it.
It was like there was a movie that just came out about the beginning of the Calvary Chapel. It was like the Jesus Revolution. It was
Yeah.
like so it was like real hippie like
Yeah.
ish, and that was the thing, like because we where I was from in here in Florida, in St. Pete, they have like they had a really happening punk scene. And so even back then I was punk, but it was like a Christian punk, which is kind of
Yeah.
weird, sort of antithetical. But that was like the only way I could rebel because the church that I went to didn't actually care about clothes. But they
Really?
yeah, I know, isn't that weird? They
That
were like
is weird. That's not what I expected you to say.
I know, right? They were, like, super fundamentalist about everything except for clothes. I mean, they didn't like it when I painted my nails, they really didn't like that, but other than that, it was, we just wore, like, ripped jeans and, had blue hair and stuff like that, but, uh
Interesting.
and they
And
they saw it as a witnessing tool, you know what I mean? Like, "Oh, they can get out there and witness to the
oh.
bikers because they really need Jesus," you know?
Yeah, yeah, you can, like you're kind of, like, almost like a wolf in sheep's clothing if you go to these punk concerts, but then you proselytize to people and lead them to Jesus.
Exactly, yeah,
Right,
and there
so
was
we
actually a lot of Christian punk shows and everything. It was kind of a little
that's
sensation for a
wild.
minute. Yeah,
That's
it's kinda weird.
wild. And so, I mean, it sounds like maybe you were having a pretty good time. What happened? Like, what was it that made you be like, "This isn't necessarily something I wanna be involved in," or hard left, like, "No, I hate this." What
Hmm.
happened there?
Well, I think see, there's this, like, whole kinda connection between, I think, like, religious thinking and addiction, because when you're raised up this way, they're constantly telling you that you can't do anything on your own. You're constantly being
Yes.
told, "Oh, you need you need this thing, to survive," or whatever, right? And so a lot
Yeah.
of times, I was going to church and I was kinda bashed that into my head that,
Yeah.
"Oh, I need a thing," and then once you kind of, I just had a little situation where I was kinda ostracized, for a bit, and,
Really?
yeah, it was just a rumor was, like, starting about, not even me, it was a drummer in our band, and they said that we as a band were involved in alcohol. I don't really know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that band is involved in alcohol.
How do you get involved? Okay, I don't know. This doesn't even make sense,
It's
but
a
it
lifestyle.
yeah, that's but, yeah, our drummer was like, he was gonna go to the military, so and he had said, "I wanna have a beer before I go to the military." He was, like, 17 or 18, I think, but, they
Yeah.
send you off to get shot at, and his dad was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, if you can get shot at, you can have a beer, sure."
Yeah.
And so people found out about it, and then we all kinda got ostracized, and
That's wild.
yeah, so then everybody was kinda saying we were these things, so at the time, I was just like, "Well, fuck it then, let's go ahead and I'll just do the thing that they're all saying I'm doing anyway. I've never
Yeah.
done anything anyway, so I guess I'll try it," you know? And I think that's like I said, like, that's done a lot on purpose, I think, or I don't know, maybe it's not done on purpose, but it's just like a side effect of religion because they tell you that you need a thing so much. Once you don't have that community any longer,
Yeah.
you're looking for something like you to fill
Yeah.
that void, right? That
Yeah.
God-shaped hole. It's not really there. You just convince yourself that there's a hole there, and then you
Yeah.
try to, so so I ended
Yeah.
up getting involved with like drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. Um,
Wow. It's wild that the same exact community who is supposed to keep you from those behaviors is so toxic and spreads so many rumors that you end up engaging in those behaviors, and so they, like, drive you in that direction, which seems like the opposite of what they would wanna do,
right.
but
Well,
you
I almost
hear
think
that so often.
yeah, and I almost think they like it because
Yeah.
then it drives you back to them like, "Oh, I hit my rock bottom, man. I'm just oh, man." And it's because they caused that, that hole in your heart, like I said, and then you
Yeah.
try to fill it with others, and you're like, "Okay, it's because 'cause I'm not Jesus in enough. That was the problem this whole time." And then it sends you back to the church, and then you're just in
Yeah.
this endless cycle, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, and they get the points for, like, "We forgive you, child. You've returned to God's grace. Like, don't worry, we're here for you." Or they do the whole, like, "We kicked you out because we knew you'd come back. Like, welcome back, my son." You know? So
Yeah.
either way, they win, and you're like, wait a second, you literally what?"
It's like, "You caused this." No.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I remember when I was in college, one of the most popular girls on campus, like, disappeared for a while, and it turns out that she became, like, a pot dealer, and she was huge in, like, our campus ministry stuff, and then she disappeared for a while, then she came back, and as long as she told this, like, big flowery story about how like she's like steeped in sin, but now she's forgiven and she's come back to change her life and she wouldn't do it again. It's all forgiven. You know, you go off, you have a great time, you sell pot, you make a lot of money, you get high, but as long as you come back and you're like, oh, but the Lord forgave me. Everyone's like, oh yeah, yeah, for sure. The Lord forgave you for sure. Now that you're done having fun. It was so much fun, but I don't recommend anyone else doing it. I made so much money, but like, don't do it. So
But it's
just,
bad money.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah, plus
so,
you want that testimony, right? Isn't there, like, so many people, like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
you know
nobody wants the testimony where you're like, I've been religious and I'll stay religious. They want the testimony where you're like, I was steeped in sin. I
yeah.
felt hellfire lick my toes. Like,
Right. Yeah, I was stuck on crack and all this. Yeah, yeah, they love those.
yeah, yeah, I did weed. And they're like, oh no.
She
um,
shot up the weed.
yeah,
Jesus.
exactly. And so then, like, was there ever a time where you thought maybe you might go back? Or was there, once you were kicked out and you were kind of emotionally turned against them, did you start doing more research and realize you were just entirely against the idea? How did that go for you?
Oh, no, I stayed a Christian for the long like, I stayed in that like, cycle being bounced back and forth from, like, the streets to back,
Yeah.
trying to get forgiveness and then going back to the street, and then you're in that, like, cycle for decades. Yeah, I went on that for
Wow.
a while. I ended up, like, being homeless for a bit, and,
Really?
shit yeah, 'cause I moved out with a girl, and that's, like, you can't do that's a cardinal sin right there, moving out
Cardinal
with a girl.
sin. Straight to
Yeah.
hell. Yep.
Straight up. And so, yeah, when I could try to, we broke up and then I tried to like come back, just at least for an interim kind of thing, just like I'll hang out here until I get another place. And I was like, nope, nope, you're not coming back here. Had like a
Wow.
restraining order and stuff. It was like, and it was crazy. But
Wow. That's wild. I mean, it seems like you're better off for it. But I mean, would you say that, or have things been since then?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, because it did help me kind of realize a lot about life, and I think that was part of like what kind of uh, got me to realize that there's definitely not a God in control of stuff. It's like
Yeah.
once you get down in that, those kind of places, and you see that like, oh no, there's nothing guiding this. The only thing that helps anybody is each other. That's all we've
Yeah.
got. Uh,
Yeah. Interesting. And so that was kind of what did it, was you realized at your lowest low that like nobody was there really to help you the way that you were promised they would be?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think it was from that and the fact that I kept on going back and trying people would tell me, "Hey, man," because I was stuck on, I got in a car accident too, so I was on opiates
Wow.
for a long time. So,
Wow.
which are you can't tell somebody that's, like, on opiates to be like, "Hey, just, pray and, like, have Jesus to tell you to not want it anymore." It's like, dude, I get physically sick. I can't
Literally. Yeah.
you know? This doesn't work that way, and they wanted
Yeah.
to act like it's just a sin problem when it's a fucking medical problem, man,
L
like, that's how
It is
that
a
goes.
literal biological issue. Like, this is an addiction. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's and so
it's
how did you I'm sorry. Did you have
oh, no, I was sorry, I was gonna say, like, I just kept trying to get help for it, but with the therapist and stuff, I'd just be rolling my eyes at him, "Oh, man, yeah, yeah, I need Jesus. I know that's actually what the problem is. You're just giving me all this psychobabble," and, you know, and it just I stayed in that cycle until I finally started to question things, way later. Actually, it was because of listening to podcasts, I came across, God Awful Movies, and I was listen to it at work because I was just listening to comedy podcasts, and that one came on, and I was like, "Oh, it's atheist. All right." Well, I was like, "Well, it's still funny, It's still," and I knew all the movies because it's like they make fun of Christian movies.
Yeah.
So I was like, I was raised with all these movies, right?
Yeah.
So, and we knew they were bad when we watched them as
Oh, yeah.
Christians, but
Yeah.
what I
Oh, yeah. I did not listen to Christian music then for a reason. It was awful. I didn't like it.
mean? Right? Oh God, it's so bad. But yeah, so like but while they're doing the making fun of all the like the movie stuff, how bad the movies are made, they're also like breaking down like why the concepts in it are toxic and poisonous and harmful. And so that really got me thinking. And at the same time, I was in a new relationship with my partner who I've been with for about almost a decade now.
Wow,
Um,
congratulations.
yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
she was like very street epistemologist with me. She would just ask questions. Didn't really didn't push too hard really. There were times when it was like, okay, come on. But, other times, it was just mostly just asking me, "Well, how do you know that? Why are you so confident that that's true?" And so on, stuff like that. And it kinda helped
Interesting.
me snap out of it. And I was all into conspiracies and stuff too, so it was like,
Yeah.
I
Well, and
know.
was your partner an atheist already, or was she like, what were her thoughts on the idea?
Well, it's funny too because she didn't identify as an atheist, she always identified as agnostic because she always came from the position that, atheism is the assertion of non-existence, kind of the
Mm,
classical philosophical whatever, definition. And,
yeah.
so now she does actually identify as an atheist because I was like, "You don't have to, you can be an agnostic atheist. It's
Yeah.
okay." I mean, you might piss off a philosophy nerd, but, they get pissed off about everything. Their whole
Yeah.
bag is fighting, so it's or
They don't
arguing.
have a real degree anyway, so it's like
Right.
I
Yeah.
say that with a degree in writing. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
That's it.
Yeah, but I think it's super interesting how that kind of was that what inspired how your channel came about? With your, like, commentary on these reaction videos and watching the clips and things like that? Is that kinda what inspired you to get into that realm of creator type creation? I
Yeah,
feel
oh,
like I forgot the word I was gonna
that
use
was
there.
not redundant at all. No,
No,
that's
not
good.
at all. Thank you.
No, yeah, basically. I mean, because like for a while it was my partner and I were doing podcast and it was called Unapologetics. I had started it to be like breaking down apologetics. But we're an interracial couple, and so like we ended up talking a
Oh,
lot about
interesting.
politics and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like really and she's really good she's a political science major, so she like,
Wow.
so I was just being taught a lot of
Yeah.
politics really because I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about that either. So it's kind of everything's been sort of new like the past 10 years or so. It's like
Yeah.
all a bunch of stuff I never knew about. And now I'm just kind
Wow.
of, you know, so
Yeah. And you were homeschooled all through high school?
yep, whole time.
Interesting.
I
Wow, and so what was like do you remember any of the first things that you learned that were the opposite of what you'd been taught in homeschooling?
Yeah, I remember who was I talking to? 'Cause we went over a lot of Kent Hovind in my and that was mostly, like, the arguments I remembered when people would
Yeah.
ask me like, "Okay, but Noah's Ark is stupid though, right? You know that's stupid at least." And I'd be like, "No, no, they were baby dinosaurs that were on the ark. That's how they fit, okay? Get a brain, alright?" But it's, like,
Try
so
reading a
dumb.
book.
Yeah, read a book, a Kent Hovind one
Yeah.
if you can find it, or Gish, he's good. But, yeah, it was stuff like that that I kinda and it felt like more it was less about the arguments. A lot of people say it's about the arguments, I think, but it was less about that and more about just being honest with myself, about, like, what I do and do not know, and that I'm trying to act like I know things because I'd like it if my family was right and, stuff like that. So, uh
Interesting.
yeah, it was less about the claims and stuff and more about, like, who was the person claiming it. I'm like, "If I love that person, then they're right," That was kind of the
Oh,
mentality.
interesting. Do you ever, like, have experiences even now where you're like, "Oh, shit, I did not know that." Like, you still learn little things here and there that you weren't taught in homeschooling, or are those days pretty much behind you?
Oh, no, yeah, no, that's every day. I'm constantly constantly learning stuff. It's crazy too because I feel like I'm like a vacuum now. I just, like, listen to books, like, all the time, and
Yeah.
it's weird because I didn't but I think before when you're trying to ignore, reality, it's almost frustrating when you learn information that doesn't align with, like, what you were supposed to believe is true, and
Yes.
so it almost makes you, like, avoid, learning altogether, you
Yeah.
know, which is frustrating for a lot of people, That's just I feel like it just made me an irritable person for the longest time, and then when I finally, like, let go and, like, I just don't believe anything unless I have really good reason for it, and it was just like a, "Oh, man, alright, I don't have to worry about all that shit anymore, like, this is
Yeah.
so relaxing."
Yeah. Yeah, I just had a conversation with a guest a couple nights ago about how one of the hardest parts about deconstructing is like the first year, you're just wrong all the time about everything. And it's exhausting. You just find out every day that you were so wrong about so many things. And like you said, you stop wanting to have these conversations sometimes. You kind of put a pause on your deconstruction just because you're so tired of always having to like either fight for what you thought was correct or find out that something you always thought was correct was yet again proven wrong. It's just very
Right.
frustrating.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's yeah, it is such a, just such a relief. I don't know. It's funny because they always say it works the opposite way, "Oh, when you find Jesus, it's just a relief." No, it's
Nope.
not. It's
No,
it's a
it's not.
nightmare. It's constantly trying to, like, maintain a lifestyle that's fucking impossible, and
Right,
you can't do it. It just
right.
doesn't work.
Right, right, and, like, you're told that, at least, as a Baptist growing up, I was told that, like, you're saved, which is great, but you still have to ask forgiveness all the time, and you're like, "But I thought I was saved and that can't be undone," and they're like, "Yeah, but you still gotta ask forgiveness," and I'm like, "But if I don't, I still get to go to heaven, right?" And they're like, "No, just do it, just you got to anyway."
You're thinking about this wrong. You stop what you're thinking.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
do the yeah.
yeah, yeah, just do it, just you're asking too many questions, you're thinking about this, and we don't like that, so stop thinking about it.
Right, I wish they would just be honest and say that, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so after you like about how old were you when you decided you weren't a Christian anymore and you were gonna take more of an atheist route?
I was like, what, mid-30s? I
Wow.
was it was late. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
for the lot I was a Christian and very strong Christian. I would say strong, but like very dedicated. I
Yeah.
really did believe this stuff and I read the Bible like every day. And so it was difficult for me to, I think, to knock those down. But yeah, I was in my mid-30s. I was like
Wow, so that
already
was quite recently. That was
yeah, about I want to say 6 years ago, something like that.
yeah. Interesting. And so when you finally decided that you were no longer Christian, you don't believe in God, was that upsetting? I know you said there was like a sense of relief, but like was there any like anger? Was it all joy and relief? What were your initial feelings there?
Well, there were still, like, I think a lot of fears,
Yeah. Oh,
that were
yeah.
sort of stuck in there, which I
Yeah.
is kinda what led me to doing, like, what I'm doing now, because I think if you can laugh at stuff, it kinda helps you, like, not be afraid of it as much, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I had a lot of fears of demons and the end times. I can't remember how many times it was several times actually that I, came to my parents like crying because their car was in the parking lot and I couldn't find anybody. And I'm like, it's the rapture happened. And I
Yep.
knew it. I knew I was left behind.
Yeah.
It's because I just
Yeah.
said damn a couple minutes ago and then it
Yeah.
happened and I didn't have time to ask forgiveness and now I'm stuck, you
Yeah.
know?
Have you seen those rapture pranks on TikTok that parents do to their kids?
Oh
Have you
my
seen those?
God, it's so fucked up.
It's
Holy
fucked up, dude. It's
shit.
fucked up. Like, and they do it. They legit do it. Like the whole family, except one kid who's like overslept, will get in the car and drive off, and they'll just like convince them that the rapture has happened.
Oh
Yeah,
my
until
God.
they like run outside, like crying and screaming, looking for like their neighbors. Then the parents are like, ah ha ha, so funny.
Gosh, that's so
Yeah,
cruel.
I know.
Damn.
And those are the same parents that in 5 years are gonna be like, "Reddit, why does my child not talk to me? I was nothing but a perfect parent to them. I don't understand what's going on."
Right,
Like,
yeah. It's maybe the
wild.
terrorizing them? Jesus, come on.
Yeah,
Uh,
wild shit.
will they put,
Um,
like, clips of Left Behind, like, just the news clips, just put that on TV?
like
That's
Orson
so funny.
Welles' radio play that, like, made everybody jump out the window, just do, like, a Rapture version just of that, just bring it back for
Right.
the anniversary.
Oh, that's so yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. It was and so I was very fearful because of that, because of that
Yeah.
type of shit, and that shit doesn't just go away, That's
No.
not like
Yeah.
even if the you're no longer, like, believing the actual beliefs, I feel like those are kinda, like, still stuck in your head a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, rapture anxiety is a real thing. It's like an actual condition. And even today, I have a podcast about being an atheist. I'm a pretty proud atheist. I have no doubts about what I think. And I still find myself being like, okay, but like, what if?
I
Like,
know what
what if?
I was like,
Like,
I'll just
just
have to
what
be
if?
I'll be the guy in the movie that like knows all the stuff. Okay, next the scorpion things are coming. All right, they're really big. They got faces of humans. They'll have teeth of lions, scorpion tail, wings with like bats. They're gonna sound like a train. It's gonna, yeah. And they're all like,
Yeah,
okay, now
we
we'll get
become
ready
the
for it.
leaders of the damned. We're like, hey guys, listen, like, we're the unlikely heroes, but we have the answers here. Well, and the funny part is everybody that's, like, left on Earth has probably read the Bible. They've probably all read it, and they're like, "We left Christianity for a reason. Like, this shit sucks, but we know what's coming, so it's fine."
You're right. Yeah.
Um, and so did your decision to part ways with being a Christian and identifying religiously, did that impact your relationship with any friends or family that you had? Are they still in contact?
Yeah. No, I mean a lot of to be honest, a lot of the homeschool friends that I have had, I've kind of left too.
Yeah.
in their own way. I still, it's sad because you see a lot of times you'll talk to my old friends and they're like stuck in conspiracy land because they don't know how to, they don't have a proper epistemology. They don't know how to like check sources and things like that. Because that's exactly the opposite of the type of thing that your parents were raising you to do. They raised you just to
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
And so, but so that kind of messed up a lot of really because nobody likes the guy, and I can't help it. I'm too honest with everybody. I'm just like, yeah, I'm not buying that. No, that's not true. And nobody likes that person. Or I mean, they're at least a little annoying.
Yeah. You're a buzzkill during Sunday service, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
But yeah, it kind of did. It made it a little bit more difficult. Like I'm still close with my mom and everything.
yeah.
She's a sweet person. Don't get me wrong. Like
Yeah.
I think she's a good person. She's just very wrong. She's just
Yeah.
mistaken about really important things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the tough part is like a lot of people think whenever you deconstruct or leave church that everybody kicks you out. But what actually happens is a lot of times for the less strict families and communities, it's just you being sad for like everybody you care about because you feel like you've crossed this bridge, you're gaining this knowledge, you're getting kind of this almost second wind on life to decide who you are. And you have to still turn and see everybody they love, everybody they care about, everybody that you ever knew still like steeped in that lifestyle or still, or if they're not steeped in it, they're still just believing stuff that you can so clearly see isn't true. And it's just a very sad experience almost because you're like, man, like I really want to introduce you to this new fun life I have that doesn't involve guilt or shame or any of those feelings that I used to have on a regular basis because of purity culture or sin or whatever. But in order to like bring you to my side, it has to be your idea. And like who knows how long it will take those people to make it their idea?
Right. And it's also like just being around them. Like if you're trying to at least just hang out, then it's like there's all this shit you can't talk about. You have to like and then it leaves almost nothing. Like, you got maybe
Yes.
the weather and
Yeah.
Marvel movies, are, like, the only thing that I found that I can really talk to them about
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everything's so polarized these days, and it's just
Yeah. And
yeah.
even the weather is an act of God, so you shouldn't even talk about that, to be honest with you.
That's
That's
I just got into that about the fires and the miracle, of
oh,
the building. All those, hundreds of people died, but, like, a building survived, so miracle, I
oh.
guess.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah. We talk about that in this house all the time. We'll be watching a true crime show and like some girl will be like kept in a basement for 6 months and like skinned alive and like her head's in a jar and like all this stuff. And at the end, they're like, we're just grateful to God that he told us, he was able to show us like who perpetrated this crime and we were able to get justice. And I'm like, what about the 6 months when she was in that basement though? Like,
right, I don't like, what is their God work in reverse? Like, what is happening? Like, how couldn't you have, like, stopped that,
yeah.
from happening? Like, what the fuck? Like, he's the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
useless God.
Yeah, well, it's like Dr. Ben says, whenever the medical procedure goes correct, it's always, "Oh, thank God. Oh, praise God." Whenever it goes wrong, it's, "Fuck you, doctor." Like,
It's
"How
all
dare
your
you?"
fault.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's never, "Thank you, doctor. Thank you for your hard work."
Right?
That
It's funny too with with doctors and everything because it's like, for good reason, the doctors will always give you the worst case scenario, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
so people are always thinking there's miracles because 'cause they're like, "Ah, the doctor gave him 2 days, 2 seconds to live," and he's like, been 5 years," because they give you the worst case because they don't
yeah,
wanna give you the best case, and then that
right.
doesn't happen, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. They they don't wanna be like, "Good news, you have 2 years or 2 days or 2 days or 48 hours to live. Congratulations." They're gonna be
yeah.
like, "Hey, we need to warn you. You need to get your stuff in order. We hope that this isn't necessary." That's
Right.
that's such a good point.
And
Has there
everybody thinks
ever
it's miracles. It's so weird. You're like, dude, you just, you're not thinking
w
about how they have to do this at all. They just
Yeah,
want to believe the miracle thing. I think that's
yeah,
all it is.
and even when I was my most devout, I remember thinking, why can't we, when I would run into people who were like anti-vax or whatever, anti evolution, I even remember thinking at that point, why can't we agree that God put doctors on this planet? Why can't we agree that God made somebody smart enough to develop the vaccine? Like, why does the vaccine have to be against God? Like, didn't God create that human who, like, even I was like, can't we agree that God created all the creatures and then they have since evolved from what he first created? Like, even that didn't make sense to me.
But I know, I don't understand that one. I always wondered about that because, like, you always had I was always raised, young earth creationist, evolution wasn't true, all this. And I'm just like, if we have evidence that, and the science is saying it happened this way, then why can't we just say that God did it that way,
Yeah.
Uh, and like, I mean, he likes to like hide or whatever anyway, it's like the whole divine hiddenness thing. So maybe that was his plan to like hide behind evolution. What I don't know, man, but they can't. Like, no, it was actual days, 24 hours, and it's like, I know, yeah. And 3 of them didn't have a son, but it was still in the units of days for somehow. I don't understand how they got there, but
It's the whole and what weirds me out the most, and this I'm sure could be its own like diatribe for hours, is when you talk to a religious person and you're like, so you can see how this might sound a little bananas to people outside of the church, and they're like, yeah, I totally get it, that's okay, like that's the whole point of faith, is that it's a little wild, but like just have faith. Okay. So how do you know that, say, for example, the Greeks and the Romans didn't have it right? How do you know that Zeus isn't the real god? And they always say something to the effect of, well, because that's crazy. Like,
but that got silly.
yeah,
Okay.
that's crazy. Like,
They don't even
what?
pretend to
That's
eat that
insane.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Where they're like, well, that's just ludicrous. Like an angry, vengeful guy up in the sky throwing lightning. And you're like, do you hear you? Do you hear yourself?
Right.
Like,
Hello, come on, like, jeez. I mean, and doesn't that make more sense than just one God? That you know what I mean? At least God's fighting each other explains the problem of evil. You know what I mean? At least,
right. Like,
the different we're caught in the crossfire of a bunch of angry gods fighting each other about whatever.
right,
That makes
right,
sense.
right, right. And honestly, like ancient religions make way more sense to me than modern religions. Like if an Aztec ghost was to come and be like, so there's a sun god and there's an earth god and there's a water god and there's a god of prosperity, I'd be like, that's a lot of jobs. So I can see how we would need more than one god to be specialized in these areas. Okay, like I get that, as opposed to one omnipotent, omniscient, knows what you're going to do, but doesn't stop you, but also gives you a choice, but doesn't, because he already knows, but then he sends you to hell. Like,
Oh yeah,
I
that's a
don't,
whole
it
mind
just,
fuck
it
right
doesn't,
there.
like, to me, it makes way more sense when the Aztecs were like, if we dance, the sun will come up tomorrow. Oh, there it is. And now it's growing our crops. I guess
See,
we should
it
just keep
worked.
dancing every night.
Yeah,
And
that's
then the
our
sun
evidence,
just keeps coming up.
and it works. Yeah, every time.
Right.
You
At least there's like information there. There's evidence and proof, and you can see it.
Right. Yeah, yeah, at least a little bit. It's not, yeah, that I think that was one of the things that made it the most difficult for me to really be able to explain away. It was like, okay, but if I was raised in like India, then I'd be talking about Vishnu, or if I was Muslim, I'd be talking about Muhammad and Allah, and you can't really, because those people are arguably more dedicated than Christians are, and Christians seem to think that they're a special, like, they're like, but they're not as like, they don't have the real one. I'm doing it right. And the others people are not. Even within Christianity itself, each of the denominations, they'll argue over who's doing it right when they
Yes.
all think each other's doing it wrong, and they all think that everybody else is not hearing from the Holy Spirit right. Like if the
Yeah.
like it's like the Holy Spirit's just up there messing with everybody,
Yeah.
just sending all
Yeah.
these different messages.
Well, and I'm like, you know, Joseph Smith says that God came to him and told him about like how to direct Mormons, future Mormons, right? And then in Islam, God came to him and told him instructions. And with Moses, God came to him and told him instructions. And all of the instructions are so different. I'm like, one of y'all are lying. It's like First Baptist Church. One of y'all are not the First Baptist Church. Somebody's lying in this group. Like, who, like, I always want to know, was it just like a crackhead who came up to one of these guys and just told them, crazy? Like, I don't know. It's just who, because they all genuinely seem to believe that they spoke to the God. So I'm like, how do we determine which one of these people actually spoke to God?
That's the $100,000 question, right? Is how can you tell the difference between someone that thinks that they heard from God and someone that actually heard from God,
Yeah, yeah.
Which That's something that you never think about when you're from within that, like, brain cage, of
Yeah,
religion.
yeah. But then at the same time, if you read the Bible and God was he was kind of vengeful, he was kind of jealous, he was this so maybe he really did go to all 3 of those dudes and give them totally different messages just to see which one would spread the furthest, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, just to see which one would win. That's another thing is I would believe that. I would believe that happened based on the God of the Bible.
Right, yeah, he doesn't seem to, like, be too concerned with our well-being,
Yeah,
especially if
yeah.
you look at Job and stuff like that. People, like, think, "Oh, it's such a story of love." I'm like, "What? Have you read Job? What are
Have
you
you
talking about?"
have you it was literally a bet between God and the devil to see how miserable they could make him before he would leave God.
Right, yeah, it
And
was
then
like
God was
gambling.
like, I did this because of you, actually.
Yeah,
So think about that." Yeah.
this is your fault, really,
As
'cause you were worshiping me too much, really. You should have
right,
given me some.
right. Like the gaslighting 101, man. Aztec Ghost says, "What do you need a god for, Sydney? I got all kinds of them." Hi, Aztec Ghost. It's so kind of you to pop up in the chat. I honestly, Aztec Ghost, I could use a god for feeding my parrots when I run out of time because that takes a long time and I have to do it every day. So that'd be great. If you could just get somebody in here to do that for me, that would really help. Um,
The parrot feeding god, I like that.
Listen,
Just
as
the
long as
one.
he changes the water, that's great. That's perfect.
Right, all the peacocks can go fuck themselves, but we're getting the parrots right now. Can you guys just go off
Yeah,
to the side there?
yeah,
Trying to do a
and
thing.
fuck emus too, by the way. Like, if we get raptured, I hope they get left on Earth. Um, so with your channel, was there a particular goal that you had in mind in terms of what you wanted to do with, like, a message or your platform, or is it mostly for entertainment? Is it to expose people to, like, atheist ideas? What's kind of your end game for your channel?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's entertainment for sure, because like, we need stuff that's not I feel like, I mean, I didn't wanna go too hard on, like, the breaking down arguments and stuff, because I
Yeah,
feel like there's other people that are way better at it than I am, you know? So I just tend to, like, make fun of stuff, and I'll explain and what I know the best I know, but I'm not an expert on anything.
yeah,
But yeah, I try to just have fun with it and make it so that it is entertaining. But the goal would say is to kind of help remove those fears from other apostates that have kind of still have those, like you said, like what if kind of
yeah.
questions and fears. It's like if we can laugh at it, and if you watch these people, and you see how they act and everything, it's objectively funny. Like it just is. Like I
It
don't
is.
even have to do much. You know what I
It
mean?
is.
I really, and
It is.
it's weird because like when you're thinking about it in your own head without looking at these people, it seems scary. But once you see these people and the things that they are saying, you're like, oh, this is super obviously not real. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that's helpful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's good to have a balance of types of creators. I was talking to Godless Granny about this yesterday on her channel, how we have the RNs, right? We have like the people who are here hosting the debates. We have the people who are here hosting those really tough arguments. And now we can focus on different types of I don't want to say proselytization, but different types of atheist proselytization. Basically, like we have the channels where people have fun conversations. Oh, like deep drinks, like him in the
All right.
comments,
Yeah.
drinking and interviewing people and just chit chatting with them over drinks virtually. That's a great platform. There's a platform like yours where it's like, let's watch this ridiculous content that just happens to be religious based and let's just laugh at it. Like especially from the lens of somebody who maybe has seen this type of content before and used to take it seriously.
Right.
I think the more types of atheist content or agnostic content or even just non-religious content that we can have out there, the better. Because I remember particularly during my deconstruction, I thought in order to come out as an atheist, I had to come out as like a debating, like actively aggressive kind of like talking about it all the time. It had to be my entire identity. And that really wasn't what I wanted because I didn't feel like I knew nearly enough about it to enter that sphere. Um, but if I'd had channels that were much more chill and like entertainment based and conversation based and things like that, it might have been an easier transition than feeling like I either wasn't an atheist, or if I was truly an atheist, I had to be ready to like fight tooth and nail for it, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's one of the messed up things that religious people. It's so funny because then they blame us for it. But like, so here's the thing: they act like we are the ones, atheists are the ones that act like we know everything, right? But they force us to act like we know everything because they're like, okay, we got to learn about cosmology. I got to know all the stuff about that. I got to know about neuroscience so I could explain away a soul. I got to know all the things about everything, just every aspect. Like biology, we got to know everything about evolution. We got to know everything about everything. And then when we
Yes.
finally do all that, they're like, know it all. You check. It's like, you're forcing me to do this. Okay. I don't want to have to
Yeah.
learn all this stupid shit. All right.
Yeah.
I just wanna,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's so
Yeah.
messed up.
I spent years as a professional debater. And so when people do that, when they're like, God's real, and I'm like, I don't think he is. And they're like, prove it. And I'm like, actually, you have to prove it. I don't know if you know that or not, but the burden of proof is on you because you brought it up. And then they're like, like, I'm
Yeah.
not about to debate with you. You brought it up. Like, you tell me why I should believe it. You like the
Right.
answers aren't God is real, or if you can't prove he's not, you have to believe in him. Like, that's not how that works. Like, I'm allowed to say no, whether I have evidence or not.
Right. And that's the whole thing. They're trying to act like we have to know so much just so we can say nah. And
Yeah.
it's like, come on, like, why do I have to do all this just to be able to be like, I don't know how everything came, like, and neither do you. That's the thing.
Yes.
Where you're just
Yes.
pretending like okay, and I'm not.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Or they try the whole, well, what if science actually proves one day that God's real? What are you gonna do? And I'm like, then I guess I'm gonna believe in God. I'm
Yeah.
gonna have questions, but I'm gonna realize he's been real the whole time. I'm not gonna like him, but I'm
Right.
gonna like, but if like, I believe in science, and if science, like, without a doubt proves one day the existence of God, well, then I'm sorry for my podcast, God. Like, but I was saved when I was 9, so I still make it in.
Oh, that's right. One save,
Yeah.
always saves. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it is weird how it works like that. You know.
That's what. And so, um do you ever have moments where you remember anything that you used to believe, like, you used to really just hold on to religiously, like, this was your goal, this was like, did you ever want to be involved in the church? Did you ever, like, look forward to heaven? Did you ever have these, like, big exciting things that no longer apply to you anymore?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I wanted to be either a youth like preacher or whatever or a music minister. That was like what I was gunning for before everything happened with the rumor stuff. I was
Yeah.
actually kind of on my way there and I think that was like one thing that kind of forced me to question it too because I started to see that they just picked people that they liked and then were like the God told me to pick this person to be in charge. Like you just got here. Like the other Steve's been here for like 10 years and God didn't tell me about Steve. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. My best
Yeah.
friend though, he gets the job. And so yeah, just little things like that you start to see. But no, yeah, I really did like want to be uh a minister of some kind, that was my goal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of fell apart.
Yeah, but honestly though, like, I feel like you would have kicked ass as a youth music minister. I feel like that would have been great for you. I'm glad you're out of there, but if you had to be doing anything, I feel like that would have been right up your alley. Do you
Right.
ever feel like those rumors that went around ended up being a blessing, or are you still like, nah, fuck that, I could have got out on my own way? Like,
No, it probably was good that it
yeah,
happened that way. Yeah, it was I don't know, I like I always say, like, I've been through a lot,
yeah,
been through
yeah,
a lot of addiction and everything, come out, I'm doing pretty good. I'm not, I don't do anything anymore,
good,
so that's
yeah,
kinda
that's awesome.
nice, but, like, I am not I wouldn't take anything back, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I feel like everything was a learning experience, and I wouldn't trade that, you know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, it's those kind of scenarios where you're like, "You could not pay me enough to do it again, but I wouldn't go back and undo it because of what I learned from it."
Exactly, yes.
Very interesting, that's so interesting. Um, do you feel like are you a spiritual person at all, or are you pretty much like souls aren't a thing, spirituality isn't really a thing? What's your stance on that?
Oh yeah, no, I'm a hard methodological naturalist. Like, if you can demonstrate it, then I will, or if you can give me a good reason to think that it's true. Let me put it that way. And
Yeah,
so, ghosts, spirits, like any of that stuff, like whatever vibrations is, I don't know. I get that one a lot. Like, oh, but you believe in vibrations, right? And it's like, yeah, I think that things that vibrate. If that's
yeah,
what I don't know
like,
what you mean, like guitar
when
strings.
I
I don't know.
feel them, I
Like,
believe
right,
in them.
right. Yeah, if I can feel it vibrate. I'm good. I can do that. But like they're trying to say that like we all have vibrations that are in a frequency to where we, it's spiritual stuff without the word spiritual.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, definitely hard naturalist.
Yeah, you're just like, "Nope, hard stop. Just when it's over, it's over. None of the spiritual stuff." Although I do wonder if I do have a spirit, does my spirit also have ADHD, or is that just me? Like, does my spirit also have it? I don't know.
Right.
Is it, like, just as confused as I am by the world? I don't know. We'll find out.
It would kinda
Maybe it's
have
better at
to,
math.
right? Like, would it
Right.
have to be a spiritual problem? I don't know. Because like, I feel like if you do have something that's different than your mind, like a spirit thing got driving, your brain would only be used for, like, motor skills, breathing, heartbeat, and that's
Yes.
it. Anything with personality, any like that all be on the soul side of things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But of course, it's not like that, but
Right. My soul has a fantastic personality, let me tell you. She's got a great sense of humor. Um, so if you had like an overall message for somebody who might be watching this and maybe they're thinking like they're still religious but they're not sure they want to stay, or maybe all they know is that they don't want to be religious anymore but they're not quite sure where to go next, what would you say? What would you recommend to them?
I would say try to get in like, get to into a community of some kind and just ask questions. Everybody's really cool
Yeah.
with answering questions. But I would, always say like just remember, just be honest with yourself. That's the most important part, I think, is just and learn to be wrong gracefully. It's
Yes.
like, if you can learn to be wrong gracefully, you'll be right more than
Yes.
most. It's like yeah.
Yes, I love that. I've never had anyone say that. Yeah, learn to be wrong gracefully. That is a wonderful piece of advice. I absolutely, because that's like, maybe this comes with age. Maybe this isn't a deconstruction thing. Maybe this comes with age. But I actually really enjoy now when I'm proven wrong and I learn something. I don't take it nearly as personal as I would have, say, when I was 21, 25, still like super Christian, super religious. And I don't know if that's a deconstruction thing or if that's just a getting older and being more mature thing. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like I'm the same way though too. I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like if you don't, it depends who you are. Because like if your beliefs are like wrapped up in your personality,
Yeah.
and so you really need your beliefs to like in order to be who you are, and
Yes.
that's all connected. Because I kind of went through that when it came with to alcohol, which is kind of weird. But like all the beliefs that I had surrounding alcohol, and it was tied to my personality, kind of. Because I was like, oh, I'm a fun and that's why I drink, because it's like it's just what I do. It's me, you
Yeah.
know. But it was just they were just false beliefs that I had about alcohol, and I didn't want to acknowledge that they were wrong because I wanted to keep. That was so tied to my personality that I was kind of holding on to those beliefs. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
interesting how you let that go, and it was like, oh no, it's none of that stuff is true. I'm still fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, yeah, well, and you bring up a good point. When your beliefs are your entire personality, but they're also not supposed to be based on any kind of facts or evidence. So it's like not only are your beliefs your whole personality, but you are discouraged from finding proof and evidence of your beliefs. So when you encounter the first person or the first couple of people who question your beliefs, not only do you feel like they're attacking your personality, but you don't know how to defend yourself
Yeah,
because
it you
you've
get
literally been trained not to.
right. You tie yourself in knots, in your head. And I argue that apologists seem to still do this. If you've ever heard like any transcendental type of arguments where it's like, well, how do you know your thinking is thinking if you can't think, and if you have to think in order to think that you're thinking, and do it's like, okay, man, come on, you're just tying yourself into pretzels to like act like what you think is not stupid. Okay. But
Yes.
but what you're right. And I think that's why like people like William Lane Craig and, folks like that are so popular because they help them kind of just justify what they were already going to think anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
But
Yeah, that is, but yeah, that idea where they've already made their decision. They're just going to spend the rest of their life justifying that decision and at least admit it. Like at
right,
least admit it. like,
right.
like,
Shit, I used to. I'd be like, look, even though it seems stupid, I'm still going to believe it, because
yeah,
this is what I do. It's
yeah,
kind
yeah, and I would fall into that territory where people would say, "Well, what if in the end you find out all of it was, for nothing. I was like, well, I'd rather dedicate my life to it and find out it was all for nothing than not do that and find out I should have. And that's like, I feel like that's like the textbook winning religious person answer.
Yeah, the what's it called? It's shit. Yeah, I always forget this dude's name. It's the God damn, what is it called? It's like the wager, something's wager.
Pascal's wager.
Thank you. Yes, Pascal's wager.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And that is, you're right. That is like oh God, and I heard that argument more than any, I think, when I was a Christian. And it sounded so reasonable at the time,
Mhm.
you know? But it's like now you're just like, yeah, but this is literally the only life that you know that you get,
Right.
and you're wasting it. Not only are you
Yes.
wasting it, but it's causing you to like treat people like I mistreated people because
A
of the beliefs that I
100%.
had,
A
that
hundred
were
percent.
and so that, led to, of course, really shitty outcomes for the people that I harmed, because of these false beliefs. So it's like,
Yeah.
no, this is important.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and it's so much bigger than that. Like, okay, you wear your seatbelt because just in case you get in a car wreck, worst case scenario, you get where you're supposed to go and you've just had your seatbelt on. Okay, that makes sense. You save money or you overstock your cabinets because just in case something happens. Okay, that makes sense. But like religion is like harmful. Like you're harming yourself. And like you said, you're harming others by the way that you treat them, even if you don't realize you're treating them a certain way because of what your religion brings up. Um, like that's, I would never go through purity culture again, just in case. Just in
no.
case. Yeah.
Well, and and it's like you're right. Like, you put the seatbelt on just in case, like that sort of thing. But like they wear you down with everything you're supposed to be doing, and the way you're supposed to be acting. You're supposed to, wake up and read your Bible every day. You got to act like this. You got to dress like this. You got to do you are literally, they say, a slave to Christ's.
A
And they think
hundred
that
percent.
that's freedom
They
somehow because
romanticize that. I've never in my life heard of any other scenario where it's like, "Hey, do you wanna be a slave for your father?" It's like, "What? No." But for some reason in church, they're like, "Yes, I do. I'm a willing." And it's just so strange. Also, totally unrelated to what we're talking about, Neil the 604 atheist is in the chat, and he's
hey,
also here with us
oh,
today.
hey,
"Hey,
there he
Neil, how's
is.
it going? What
Oh,
the
we got
hell is
both.
going on here?"
That's
So he's
awesome.
here in spirit and in person and in
Oh,
puppet.
that is
I just
great.
yeah.
I
Um,
love it.
well, Brently, this has been a really fantastic conversation. I wanna be respectful of your time, but, if we could catch do you have any live streams coming up in the near future? What's the next thing we can attend and watch and check out? Your link is in the description right now, but where can we find you next?
Well, I am gonna. I just found this video that now I have to cover. Is Greg Locke smashed a Barbie set
Yeah,
or
I
something?
saw that. I saw that. He taped a Bible to a stick and he smashed a Barbie house because he said you need to defeat Barbie with the Bible.
With the Bible. So that'll be my next, my next probably tomorrow morning.
That's
I will do that. I
hilarious.
go at random. I try to like map it down to a certain time, but I can never keep to it. So I'm just like, I don't know, just hit the bell,
Yeah.
and then try to make it,
Hit the
but.
bell, subscribe for updates, give us a like, give us a thumbs up. Well, Brentley, this has been a really fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've also really enjoyed learning more about your personal story. I feel like you do such a good job highlighting everybody else's stories or the other things you're focused on, but I've never actually heard from you what your story was. So thank you for sharing with us, and your journey sounds like a wild one. And thank you everyone in the comments. Please visit his channel, check out his content if you're not already subscribed. And the audio from this will be on podcast platforms in the next 2 weeks. So if you want to revisit this interview, want to give it a listen, feel free to check out Growing Up Fundie on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and here on YouTube. Thank you, everybody.